to Math 101 Episode 1. We'll be explaining how math is connected to shapes. Well, it's really connected to squares. And subtraction and division has nothing to do with this lesson. Because squares are multiple lots. 2 lots of 2. You can either add 2 twice or multiply 2. They'll both equal 4. Or go bigger with harder numbers, like 25. 5 lots of 5. I have no idea how to make a 25 square. Or even bigger numbers. It's just more multiplication and addition. Multiplication after 4 will be just like 16. Like 9. It's 3 times 3. Or 6. 4 times 4. Or 25. 5 times 5. But however, with addition, you have to add. Double adding. 3 is double. 4 is adding a new component. The more higher your number gets, when it gets to a 5, you're going to have to add another. You want to make sure there's one less amount of plus signs than the actual number. What that means is 1 you just need, but this rule does not apply to 1. 1 has to equal 1. 2 equals... You don't even need plus signs for 1. 2 equals 1. 3 equals 2. 4 equals 3. And 5 equals 4. And so on, etc. And that was only the multiplication part. That was only the addition part. Multiplication is just glorified this. So we have an equation inside of an equation. Multiplication equals 3 equal... Multiplication equals, in parentheses, 3 equals 2. That's the equation for multiplication. Just repeat that equation a lot more and you'll get your equation for your answer of squares. Squares are really simple shapes. But squares are just glorified rectangles, for God's sakes. They're special they're equal in a special way. So yeah, we talked about squares equaling multiplication and addition and separation of a square into even chunks. So there are 2 types of separation for a square: subtraction and division. Subtraction will subtract as many squares as you want, as long as it's not over. I'm drawing 2 scenarios. well, 3. Scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3. If you have a number bigger than the other number, that means it's not correct. Other ways can be correct. But however, in division, it's a little more complicated. You actually have one new rule. 1 full square equals 4. You can only divide 4 by 2, splitting it in half to equal 2. Backwards multiplication. Remember when we talked about multiplication earlier? You remember, right? The equation. Multiplication equals, what was it again? Multiplication equals your bigger number times 4 being your bigger number being 1 more than your smaller number. Yeah, so this is glorified reversed, basically. This is reversed. And this is now, your equation has now gone in here. Now your equation has to follow the steps of the square instead of the multiplication. It's a reverse scenario. Whatever equals whatever part, whatever equals, division's just backwards multiplication. If your answer to the multiplication, alright. Here's 2 different questions of their diversity. This is division. You see the equation has been flipped. The equation has been flipped for division, but the equation is flipped. But the equation for x is flipped. Both division and they're both polar opposites. I brought this up so we can explain how squares could work. Next episode will be on equal polarities of addition and subtraction being opposite, just like we just talked about, but I'll also re-explain the division multiplication problem.